Okay, so yesterday I streamed for a little while. Fucked it up royally because I forgot to fucking put the sound on. Have sound today, you can see it beeping away. Anyway, so I'm in the process of I have to give a presentation to my fellow colleagues in anthropology soon on my experience in the field. I've just finished field work. I'm doing a PhD in the anthropology of performance studies, specifically how to engage and create and manifest something called online theatre. If you were able to hear what I said yesterday, there's probably lots of gold in there. However, here we are. So, thought I might start again. So, I'm working on for the moment. So I'm working on presenting it's basically just like a PowerPoint of what happened in the field. So I thought, hey, what might be a really cool thing to do at the end is embed a video I'm making about that I made about making the thing, which I then twitch to people like you to see if anyone was interested. Which reminds me, I should probably put it on my phone so I can keep track of all you lovely people who are tuning in and watching. You holler into the void, don't you? Hey? Hey? You holler into the void, I tell you. Oh, I tell you. Alright. It's doing its thing now. Hey, online theatre returning from the field. I figured this was a good way of me to sort of really do a fundamental sort of grasp of where I started in terms of what I wanted to do and how I sort of built the project towards the end. There we go. Okay. So, online theatre returning from the field. Now, theatre I'm starting from the place that theatre really hasn't really changed across the nature of performing space hasn't really changed for hundreds and thousands of years. On the left there, as you're looking at it, you will recognise probably a Greek theatre, amphitheatre, first of its type. But even then, born of the idea of a space. In the middle there, you see a conventional stage layout with the audience and the stage. And then that's how theatre workers generally break up that space. So theatre is all about the organisation of space, specifically an empty space somewhere in the can you see my awesome. Right, so this one here is, we're organising space. We're organising people in space. Yeah, we have three things essentially. This is going from Peter Brook's essentialism and structuralism. Okay, some big words. Where you have an empty space, and then in that empty space you have people to fill it. Performers, actors, speakers, whatever. And then you have someone to watch that space, which is the audience. And that configuration and that organisation of space hasn't really changed ever. This is more of a conventional idea now, where the audience sits at the front and the actors are there. Sometimes you look down at the performance, sometimes you look up at the performance. And from that, actors and theatre makers and performers have broken down that space to even smaller groups of space. You can see here, stage left, centre stage, downstage, centre. And we talk and communicate and we create in this spatial environment. Yeah. Now that top line there is probably a particularly Western, I hate the term Western, but European maybe model, conventional colonial model of theatre space setup. And so if you're interested in anthropology, you might go, hey, well, that's a universal comment you're making there about all space and all stages being the same. But really, I think those three things are universal, because across other cultures, you'll see the demarcation and the organisation of space in similar ways. So down here on the left again, this is the stage design layout for kabuki or no theatre, Japanese, Chinese theatre. So this here is a long walkway part. This is a sort of raised stage area, and then you have various configurations of audience. Empty space, somewhere to watch it, somewhere to fill it. This version over here is what we call a traverse stage. So this is used in theatre, but you also see this in a lot of public spaces and public performances as well. So you have a stage in the middle and the audience either side. Now, yes, you could watch a play in that kind of environment, but if you've ever been to a Christmas pageant or a parade or a pageant or a military parade or something of that nature, you'd recognise this. If this was the street that kept going up and down, and this is where the audience were, and this is where your parade moved up through the middle. Yep. So still, whether it's a cultural performance like a play, or whether it's a social performance like a parade, still this demarcation of space, and there's still an authority of power between those people who are allowed to be here and do things, and those people who sit here and are sort of bound by the rules of that, whether cheering is allowed, clapping is allowed. Here's another one, theatre in the round. You know, just more of an extension of this version over here, but it goes all the way around. Yes, you can get theatre in the round, and you can watch theatre in the round. It's quite interesting, quite challenging work to do. But again, if you took this into a public spectacle kind of sphere, you would see that that could be a stadium concert, that could be a boxing contest at Madison Square Gardens. It could be something of that nature that can expand or contract in a public or cultural performance. Okay, so they're traditional spaces. They're geographically and geometrically designed. Certain people are allowed to stand in certain places by virtue of where they're allowed to stand. They're allowed to do certain things, or not certain things. They have certain power and authority, power to speak, authority to speak. Okay, so here's a few examples here of this in real life. So this is your almost Greek theatre, almost in the round. This is the Globe Theatre in London. We recognise that. This is more of a traditional stage setup. Stage there, audience here, except that's Wembley Stadium during Live Aid. This is the celebrations in Adelaide of the 100-year centenary of the state. This is your Traverse Theatre. Stage in the middle, halfway, audience either side. You can see the physical relationship of the space determines authority. Now, we move. So that's what I'm born and bred in. That's my 30-year career. That. I understand that. I can do that blindfolded. I understand the nature and the relationships of space and power and how to create drama in that environment. Right? Now, so what I wanted to do was go into an online environment. Now, the web, online, and all the rest of it has democratized so many different aspects of human social engagement. As you probably know, don't have to go into all of that, but you can imagine finance, property, banking, politics, blah, 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 you name it, goes on. So, where is the interaction for theatre? Now, most theatre companies that have sort of employed the use of online media at the time, sort of done it in a way where they still work in this kind of environment here, and they just film it and broadcast it. Right, so the idea is that those people there in that space and in that time, 100 years ago, whenever it was, were all physically there in that space sharing that moment. Now, if you're watching that being live streamed, you're effectively watching someone else have a moment. You're not there with them. You don't really get that sense of being alive in the room with them, which is the magic of theatre. Now, that's not to say that you can't have live kind of impact experiences online, but when most theatre companies have just sort of broadcast out or used online media as a form of branding. Okay, so I wanted to know if you could make this is making theatre and performance of the space it's in. Can you make theatre and performance of the space that is being online on the internet, right? So, online spaces. How do you make content? Well, you know, it's all sorts of stuff. This next we're going to do some work with this might animate it a little bit, maybe if I get tricky. Maybe this is my trick. Anyway, we'll see. So you start with the idea that there is a space, there is a camera filming something, there's a camera filming me. I'm sitting here, I'm in a space, you are sitting there, you are in another space, and you are watching me fill this space and do things in it. Yep. Online we capture that, we have to capture that with the use of cameras, video equipment, things like that. Then often what happens, more often than not, it gets filtered through an editing process. You know, most YouTubers, YouTube famous people and all the rest of it use editing heavily, which means there is another hand in the storytelling. There's the raw event that's happening over here, and then there's the filtered event that's happening over here. That's the one you get. Yeah. Generally speaking, this is all very generally speaking. Generally speaking, you'll be sitting at home on your computer watching it, or you might be looking at it on your phone somewhere in the dark. You might be, as friends of mine have often done, be watching while they're making dinner. And the point is, you're not here with 100% of your focus and attention being directed at a single point of interaction. You're here, doing other things, surrounded by other environments, on your own, maybe, more than likely. You also, by the nature of social media, social media can only exist if people put stuff into it, if they contribute into it, comments, emojis, posts, photos, whatever. You have to be in it, unless you're a lurker. That's another comment, another story. Anyway, so you're often contributing back into it. So you might be watching something and tweeting back to the person that you're watching, or sending a message or whatever. And that is often done in a language that is unique to the platform that it's on. Likes, retweets, loves, whatever they happen to be. Yeah. So that would appear that it's much more linear. This one I definitely have to animate because it's just too confusing. Starts here, goes through a filtering process, then it goes out to multiple devices and multiple people working in multiple places. Those people all interact, and they can interact with each other, each platform, each person on a different platform with each other. They can interact with the person who made the video, although probably, unless it's a live streaming thing, not at the time. So we get to live streaming, where this is all sort of happening simultaneously. Where the hell is this lovely, neat space? It's nowhere to be found. It's everywhere, all at once, simultaneously. And because of that, it breaks down the conventional rules of authority about who can speak and who can't in this space. Because in this space, everyone can speak. Everyone's required to speak. Well, not in the case of you watching and not chatting. Okay, so what we end up is some differences, some fundamental differences in the way that you have to think about performance in a space, in a defined spatial relationship of power. Ever been to the theatre and crinkled your chip packet? Guaranteed to get that look. You know, there's a sort of aggregate social behaviour that is distilled from audience to audience. It's partly why actors love performing. Every show is new because every audience is new. Made up of individuals in an aggregate sense that are having an aggregate experience, and you disrupt that and everyone will let you know. It's social mediating role. Versus this, where you've got gaming going, it demands multiple things happening at once, like the chip packet, but the chip packet and a bottle of drink and I don't know, maybe dropping some acid or something as well. Who knows what to do? You're snogging your girlfriend and boyfriend in the back of the bleachers. You're doing lots of different things. This environment requires and demands lots of different things. The gaming, the watching the game, the stats of the game, the subscribes and the likes and the feedback, the comment thread. The comment thread is often a group of people. Sometimes they're just talking to each other. They're not even talking to this dude over here. They're all over the place. You've got a solo person. You've got this sense of authority, like I was talking about. The one person that can command all. Very unique position to be in. Versus an environment that is interconnected and made up of all these guys are playing the same game. They're probably playing the same game with another table of guys that are set up somewhere else. Ironic, I chose this photo because it's a little ironic that there's a crowd of people watching in that normal traditional space, these people working. But by the by. Anyway, so my early work was like, okay, so I've got to build a stage. I've got to build a stage that is unique for this kind of world and this kind of online space. I need this kind of thing going on, right? So, eventually, I was able to get hold of a computer. Now, I had done some early streaming before the last couple of years, but I was working with old computers, old cameras, old. The one good thing was that they all had universal plugs and cables back then, so they all talked to each other. That changed when companies realized they could make even more money with dongles and adapters and cables and plugs and blah, 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 blah. So pretty soon that broke down. I had to get some equipment that could deal with plus the nature of video encoding, uploading speed, graphics cards, processing, all of that sort of stuff. I needed some basic stuff, but I needed some basic stuff, but I still wanted to keep that in a sort of retail, domestic kind of experience. Your average everyday computer, your average everyday phone, your average everyday kind of accessibility. That's what they're all plugging. You can do it from anywhere. So I needed some hardware. That's my old camera, old camera. That's my whiz bang new Mac that I got. Hello, love you. I got some open source software, OBS, open source software, and we started to create a kind of spatial stage environment where we could work like that together. And already things were changing. So you can see even from this photo here, that's probably what I'm much more familiar with. Actors in a room standing in front of me, performing out to me, facing out, and all the rest of it. I started to realise that I needed to start directing from within the screen, directing action from within the screen. So even though the actors are standing 2 or 3 feet away from me, I was watching them here and directing them from here. Now, let's keep going. So, brought you up to speed. Okay, so go with me for a little bit here. I'm going to create the next phase. So there. Okay, so the next phase was that we started to, we ended up with something like this. It was, in the end, yes, in the end, we took that model and we went nuts with it. Yeah. Trying to find particular photo. Let this load in. Alright, so once we realised that we pretty soon realised that we weren't restricted to one performance space. We could have multiple performance spaces. We had a small, like you can see in this picture here, there was a little studio set up there. There was a setup there on the couch, and there was another setup going here on here in the window. So we effectively, through our monitor, this is where I have to find the photo, effectively through our monitor, find the photo now. We had multiple things going on. As a result, you end up you can imagine the amount of data I've collected, photographs, footage, images. Right. You're going to do this kind of work online, anthropologists in the future, then you need tech support. I can't tell you that enough. You needed something bad. Something bad. So, like I said, this may take a little while. I have to go and find you know, you think you're, you just have to use it. You know, you think you're organising these photos and images really well. And then you go to find that one photo. And puck knows where it is. He's entertaining you yet. Just hope it's going to go. Okay, this one. So already our performance and our space and our geometry had changed fundamentally. So that started to bring into the element of how do you tell a story when you have multiple stages. Now you've got to remember, I wanted to maintain as close to that universal essentialism as possible, and in order for whatever was to be created to sort of be representative, or something that people recognised as a piece of theatre, I needed to try and include as many conventions of going to the theatre as possible. So a live audience, being like having a live audience reaction, having a box office process where you go and how do you separate space? When you go to one of these theatres or a busker or whatever, the space is separate. You go through a box office to get to the space. Yeah. So something like that you go through a process where you leave the usual world behind and then you go into this world of the theatre and the play, and you go, right, here I am, I'm in this world. This is the file, apparently, it's the photo. So how do I get these conventions in? And one of the things I always wanted to do right from the word go is I wanted to maintain the fact that this wasn't just filmmaking, right? I didn't want to start making stuff that was trying to usurp theatre or be something that was trying to undermine what I love about the raw energy of just being in the room with someone, having a story told to you. Pretty cool. I wanted to try and maintain that. And that idea that the live experience, the being in the room, is the premium experience. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a similar or a distinctly unique experience from the same event online if you're watching from somewhere else. So we started to then move on to story. Now, story. So we started with, this is going to take forever. We started with improvising around characters, doing some character improvisation work, and just streaming long-form character improvisation work, and just streaming like I'm doing now, just put it out there. And we decided to go with Twitch because Twitch has this community aspect to it. And we thought, well, we wanted to, engage with the community. Like all good theatre does. All good theatre is of the community it's in, as much as it's of the space, it's of the community. If it's literally community theatre, or a pageant, or a parade, or a local state theatre company, or an opera, or whatever, the New York Opera versus the National Theatre in London, or they are of their history and their culture and their people. So we wanted to use Twitch as a means of maybe starting to generate that kind of the community of people who might be interested in this kind of work. Put it out there. People are interested in anything, and we pretty much started to realise that people would watch anything. Some crazy batshit stuff out there that people would just sit and troll and watch for hours, and we thought, fuck, man, we're theatre makers and artists and writers and painters and actors. Surely we can make something that is as entertaining as someone knitting. Surely. So we started putting our head to the process. I think never going to load. Let me cancel it. So we started putting our head to the process of what sort of story could we make for this environment. Now, here's where we came up with a new quandary. Right, this is the most unique part of and the most challenging fork in the road. Because when you write a normal play, you're writing a normal play for that traditional, conventional environment, where an audience comes and sits down, they watch. Let me just get this. Yes, so they've come into that environment. There we go. It's better. So they come into that environment, and by the nature of the way it's set up and the power structures and authority and blah, 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 and all that other stuff I was talking about before, by the nature of the way that works, so too does the narrative and the story arc and the structure of a play. It has a beginning, a middle, and end. It has a character arc from beginning to end. Normally you go and watch a play and you meet these characters for the first time on stage, and so as the play unfolds in that time span, you slowly learn about their history and their backstory. You learn about Hamlet's backstory as the story goes on. You learn, and all the other characters and their history, and why this moment that these characters are in right now is so important, because all that stuff gets unravelled and unpacked. Why Willy Loman is crazy. Everyone that play is about reflecting on a guy who's reflecting, for God's sake. So within the scope and that time and space of that play being presented, that story being presented, you can unpack a whole heap of stuff about characters that you've never met before, you're not particularly invested in. That's the challenge. And you learn to meet them. Right? Okay. If you were to write a story like that, and we tried the various different versions of writing stories like that, you are asking the same thing of your online audience, that they sit down and meet these people for the very first time and spend time with them. Now that's where I'm here. It immediately becomes a play. It becomes a broadcast two-dimensional model, because these characters are fixed. I don't know them. I have to sit here and watch them, and hopefully they'll be entertaining to me. No, they're not. Flick onto the next tab. Or hopefully they're entertaining for me, but I want more things. I want more stuff. I'm a bit distracted. I want special effects. I want this. It's much more dynamic engagement because of the nature of the structure, like I just said up here. You can't hold them. So to write a text that had that same structure and that narrative through it would be anathema. It would just turn people off straight away. Why would they want to do that? They might as well watch a movie, right? As watch a play being just broadcast to them and shown to them. Much more dynamic. So, how do you create that sense of narrative drama without the capacity to unravel a character? How do you create that sense of narrative drama that comes with that? You know, you watch people who they watch online, their YouTubes and stuff, they know them for months and weeks. They know all the history of their posts. This post is interesting because of that post. It's like watching a TV soap opera. It just unravels and it keeps unfolding and rolling over itself, and they come in and eventually they get swept up in that, and they come to the next episode or the next tweet or the next show or the next video with a sense of that history, and it's exciting in the moment that it happens. Yeah? So how do we create that sense? So I worked with the idea that I probably should get back to doing this. I worked with the idea that you know, when you're at school and one day you get to school early in the morning and you hear a whisper around how so-and-so hates so-and-so and they got into a fight last night, and so-and-so slept with so-and-so's partner, and now they're really angry and they're going to get him this morning. Oh man, keep away, keep away. Oh yeah, and it starts to carry on. Oh yeah, I know so-and-so. He and I had a conversation the other day. He was pretty upset. Yeah, I spoke to so-and-so the other day and they said this about them. And and the Chinese whispers and the gossip starts to spread. And pretty soon the whole school is aware of these two characters who are... And now you find out it's recess time, and then you find out, oh man, there's going to be a fight after school. They're going to meet 3:30 behind a bike shed. It's all on. We're going to go again. Like, it's all going to come to a head. Like, he's really pissed. He's really pissed. And so this anticipation builds, and this momentum builds in the anticipation. And we're all there, and we all come to the bike shed at 3:30 on the afternoon in question with all this sense of anticipation and knowledge and backstory and history. And we're about to watch the event unfold, and there it goes. And we cheer for the winner, and we hope someone gets smacked down, and is there going to be justice, or is the bad guy going to get away with it? And there's your event. And there seemed to be the key for social media. Social media is a way of generating and sweeping up and getting followers and doing all of that sort of stuff. What if we created certain characters who had online avatars? And those characters talked to one another. They knew each other in a relationship. And then something happened in that relationship that started to build tension. And then that tension built to an end point. And that was the performance that we streamed. That was the show that came to the end. So, we did that. Long story short, did that. Long story... It feels disrespectful to think of how much pain and suffering we went week after week failing to work through all of this and get... It sounds so easy for me to just say it now. But it was painful. So painful. Oh, God. Thinking through this space. No one had ever done this before, you see. No, this has never been done before. It's never been tried before. There is no roadmap. I have no idea what's going to work, what's not going to work. Just trying shit. See if we can establish a relationship and tell a story with a relationship with an audience. Anyway, I digress. So, created 3 different characters. They started playing with avatars. They started talking to each other. We built up a sort of scenario of a timeline of what happened. These characters met, and they had these sort of relationships, and they had these events, and then we made a moment where, okay, something happened there, one tricked the other or betrayed the other or did something like that and then upset the other one, and then it had to move on, and somehow we had to get them back to a moment where there was this cathartic moment, this performance, the fight at the end of school. Yeah. So we did that, we devised all of that. Now, it was very hard to write this thing. So me writing was really kind of just continually coming up with a series of beats, moments for characters to hit, or speaking individually to the characters and say, this week I want your character to be really jealous or really really tired and angry because they're carrying an injury, and see if that affects one of the other characters as you're tweeting and talking to them and stuff. And then we structured these relationships around them, and we built towards that performance. So now I can put my next slide in because I know what I want it to be. Now I am cutting a really long story really short for the purposes of brevity in this experience. But what I can tell you is at the end, we ended up with something like, actually, we ended up with something that didn't work. Oh, maybe it did. No. Okay. We ended up with something that looked like get in there. Stay with me. Try this. Ended up. Oh, fuck, that didn't work at all. Fuck! Alright, give me a sec. Give me a sec. Aha! We ended up with something that looked like this. This was performed in my house. Again, part of that democratization of space. Right. Black lines of walls, kitchen bench, camera with a light, table, little one there is a mobile phone camera that was remote, audience was sitting there, audience, performance space here. It's not because the actors came out and spoke to the audience, there was like a secondary performing space, and then there was this green screen space, thing behind it as well. So the end result looked a little like the end result looked a little something like that. Something like this. So this is the same setup with photos in each position to represent what it looked like. Yeah. Something like that. The final image looking something like this. This is from a rehearsal, so it's not the final one. Once I finish talking to you guys, and I'm going to get a glass of wine, I'll probably come back and redo this. But some of the photos. So that was essentially our thing, the way it looked. Now, okay. Take you, show something else. Okay. So I'm going to go to my YouTube account. So now you're watching me, watching my thing, blah, 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 watching me do my thing. Pause it for a sec. So this is the live stream show. I'm going to go with fast forward version of it. Right. So that there. That right there. That's what we're talking about, baby. We condensed the whole thing down into that. So we've gone from there, traditional space, you can see it here, audience, actors, tech desk. We've gone, so audience, actors, conventional space. We started to do this sort of thing here, right? Because you can see tech stuff. That's what I'm filming right there. That's what I'm filming. That's it right here. And we managed to get our script. Multiple stories happening in multiple different spaces at multiple different times. In the end, we had an audience of about 10 people in the room, and we had an audience of about, I don't know how many were online. Can't remember off the top of my head. Few. So, that's it. That's where my field work started, began, and ended. There's a lot of decompressing to do after the field, and if anyone's interested in that kind of aspect, how to do ethnography and separate yourself from the field, it's particularly autoethnography, which is the study of yourself in the environment as much as the environment itself. For the last couple of months, particularly, well, the whole field work has been done from my home. But particularly the last week leading up to the performance was done from the kitchen, and it was very stressful. Living from home, working from home, money, time, couldn't walk away at the end of the day, when things go wrong, you know, like you just got to live with it and deal with it, keep watching. So there's all sorts of, yeah, so we had pre-recorded stuff in there, right? So this, I love this because, right, that is my kitchen, but that is what it was screened on, green screen. It wasn't actually for this audience. For this audience, it wasn't. The kitchen wasn't there. It was hidden behind the screen. Yeah. So hence I can get overlays. Twitter feed, live Twitter feed coming into the show. Use the hashtag pre-recorded bit. Right. Audience involvement. Food. Served them. The premise of the show is lunch with Jenna. We worked with lunch because cooking and food seemed to be a popular kind of thing, and that idea of conversing and sitting down, and also it was a good vehicle for the nature of, you know, social interaction often happens around food and sharing a meal. So we wanted to work with the idea of food. Okay, so here's an example of the live audience embedded into the performance. Now this live audience could also see this being rebroadcast in like a foldback monitor within the room as well. So they could see literally what was being broadcast out. So there's this kind of multiple layer thing going on. There's no stage. In online theatre there is no stage. There is no here and there and we sit and we watch. It is a multifaceted, recyclable kind of experience that needs to fold back in on itself layer upon layer upon layer, and it just, and as it keeps doing that, that itself creates a sense of drama and tension. Keep going, keep going, keep going. So more of this stuff. So that's with the 3 actors in. All tweeting there. So this little bit here was a pre-record. Okay, so we pre-recorded this. This is still in front of our white screen. It's still performed in my kitchen, but it was indicative or representative of you know, these introductions that people do. But also in a practical sense, the next scene we filmed like a radio play. So the actors, while this bit was being broadcast, this pre-record was being broadcast, the actors were moving the set, moving the table out of the way, moving everything out of the way to, in real life, perform the next bit, which hopefully would have the appearance of being also being a pre-record, except I fucked up some of the... Yeah. So green screen, yeah. So this is filmed on a mobile phone. So I've got high definition cameras, I've got mobile phone cameras, give a different video image quality, make it look, and just, you know, handheld, not fixed. Yeah, and then there was a cheap trick, simply an overlay. There was no real blood, simply an overlay. But the actors were telling the story like it was real. Creates this weird effect. I like it. It's really cool because the real in the room audience, that's with the pre-recorded, the in the room audience totally fell for it, and we had the suspension of disbelief. And we're, you know, and here the actors are back. They've moved the set back. You would never know that they were even gone. You would never know that they were even gone. They moved it back within precision. That's just the fucking work of an actor working on the stage. Fucking amazing. All of these guys, amazing. Then it gets into some audience interaction stuff with the live audience. It got a bit hairy. What we found is that we deconstructed the rules and authority about who can speak so much that we almost lost control of the play. So a little bit of work there to be done to maintain, because you've got to maintain. Online, it's anarchic, and you want to encourage that anarchism, and you want weird stuff happening all over the place. Like Nikki's there reading off the screen, the live feed tweets that are coming through. She's dealing with a live audience. She's dealing with the actors, and the live audience starts to talk back. Now here's one of our characters going through a confessional monologue. Confessional monologue where they're, you know, talking about the nature of their identity and what it means to be human and all that kind of narrative stuff, which is all of these characters and all of these words and lines all come from the experience of the actors. That's the autoethnographic part. So, you know, it gave me an opportunity. I wanted the editor to be a hand that the audience could visually see, that they recognised that the editor was telling a story as much as the actors and everything else was telling a story. And again, it's another one of those layers to get back in. So I started doing some freaky stuff with their characters, split personality. And then I took everything away and I just put them in the black. And this is a poignant moment where they're kind of talking about sort of some real stuff and working through some stuff in their relationship. My battery's about to die, that's why I'm talking fast again. So I put them in a black screen, just made them isolated and vacant. And it just looked really dark. And then, here's another little bit where one of the characters got busted. And each character is talking about their own, you can see the green screen here. Each character is talking about their own stuff. And so I used screen capture technology and other pre-records to sort of indicate and highlight their stuff as well. So now we're back in the kitchen. Right, looks like they're there. Amazing. I'm pretty happy with that. It came out really good. That's the high def camera quality there. More stuff, more stuff, more stuff. And it kept going, and then towards the end, so this is them signing off, and they've invited the real life audience up to the table to eat, and they're sharing food, and they're just signing off. And so the play has a kind of conclusion, but it's no conclusion, because online in that soap opera social media environment, there never is a conclusion. It never finishes. Characters resolved, and we move on with our lives. It always keeps going. It's got to be open-ended. So again, how do you, in terms of story writing, how do you create a story that ends but doesn't end simultaneously? Anyway, that is a recording of what happened. You can check that out. My battery's about to die. I think I'm pretty much done with this. Might come back tomorrow, see you again, maybe. Might be another day. We'll see. Keep guessing. Like she's doing up there. I'm going to wave bye-bye. Okay. See you next time, gang. Love you lots. See you. Bye. Whatever. Yeah, okay. Find the program. Turn the thing off. Fuck, man. Talk about leaving the room. Leave the room. Okay, this time.